Okay, folks, let's start this demonstration of how to fill, repair and soak some of these residue blanks or cast blanks. I'm going to refer to super glue as the main material to use on these repairs. We call them CA, so every time you hear me mentioning CA, you know what I'm talking about. This is the thinnest CA that you can find on the market. This is the ideal for soaking. It's very thin, it's very fast. For repairs, we have to have a little filling. Two options: either using the super glue, but a high viscosity of 700 CPS. CPS is the way they count the viscosity, or they distinguish the viscosity of the glues. The CA that I just shown, the red label, the super thin, is 5 CPS. This one is 700 CPS, so it's quite thick. I think it's going as high as 1,500. You can use epoxy or 5 minute epoxy, or araldite. In some countries they call them araldite. And another product that I strongly recommend is an accelerator. You put this in a small perfume bottles, and this accelerates the action of the CA, of the super glue, very, very fast. It will dry and set in within seconds. That allows you to continue to work and not have to wait and not get sticky glue everywhere. We also need something to mix the glue, bit of a stick, bit of paper towel, a little bit of tape. That's going to be very important that you have a little bit of tape, because the tape is going to allow us to fix the edges and we broke, particularly from chipping. Like for example, this case here, show you better. See a little bit missing here, and also a little tiny bit missing there. Obviously on here the blanket hasn't been uncut. That would not make any difference, but if you have a similar damage, you can easily repair that. The other repair that I'm going to do in this case here is filling. This blank here, they got a few too many air bubbles, and we're going to fill this. We can use either color mix, or in this case here, because we got pretty much translucent or semi-transparent colors, we can just use straight CA, clear, and regardless if it's slightly green or slightly blue, the clear will make it invisible. We're also going to deal with the soaking of that red velvet that I call, I don't know the technical name or the scientific name for that, but on the cross-cut section of this Banksia pot that I grow here in the yard, this is a good example here. This is the material, that's the material that I call the red velvet. This material is water repellent, liquid repellent, and nature created that so that the seeds inside the pod and the core, which is the heart, don't get penetrated by anything. So this material is very, very difficult to soak. The stabilizing solution did not penetrate it. The only thing that does is a super thin CA, and the thickness that it causes is about 2 millimeters. So every couple of millimeters you have to re-soak so that you continue to work in a hard surface and start to be soft. You can do most of the rough cuts, but leave enough material to soak before you do the final cut, where it will be crucial that the cutter is cutting on hardened surface and not soft surface. Unfortunately, you can't not soak straight through with the CA because it only goes as far as 2 mil. So you have to, as you expose that velvet, it's got to be soaked. I'm going to start with this one here, where I'm going to very simply use straight CA. Now I've got an option to use the thick or the thin. This one here, there is also a small amount of material that I don't mind to actually soak. That's a different pod, and it's got a little this red velvet, but it's not as bad as the other one. So I'm going to fill this one with a thick CA, and you just put a drop in. Actually, I normally put the CA in smaller containers so that they're easier to, you just cover it. Make sure that you just put a little bit over, because it's going to be sanded down, and as it dries, it shrinks slightly. Now while it's like this, if I want to take care of any tiny little bits, I can just use a thin CA and just pour the top, and then use an applicator. This is craft foam. It comes in sheets. You can cut it in strips. It is great to apply the CA with, and basically what you do is just spread it around generously and let it just soak a little bit. In this case here, you don't want to use the accelerator straight away. You need to give it a few seconds to harden. Now you can pretty much enough time, and it's just about 10 inches away. Just give it a couple of sprays, and if there's any air, you'll blow, the air bubble will blow. For example, here the CA was still on top of air bubble, and the accelerator has forced the air to come out. So I'm going to use the thin CA in this case, and make sure that it's covered. Spray, and you can see the action of, sometimes it does smoke slightly if you got a good amount of CA. If you put the accelerator on it straight away, you'll start to smoke. That's not a problem. You just have to prevent to inhale because they are very toxic. Yes, if you can use gloves when you're working with a CA, and if you get CA on your hands or super glue, you're going to have it stuck. The fingers will get stuck, and you have to use either the special debonder or acetone will sort the problem. If you use gloves, you are protecting your hands, and you can always replace the gloves if required. So I'm going to leave this blank alone and going to demonstrate how I'm going to repair that. Again, I'm going to use clear CA. I look to where I've got a better access to the CA, so better access is from the top. So I'm just going to put a little tape a little bit over so that it doesn't run this way. Put a bit of tape, press it in, you don't want the CA to escape, and you just pour a little tiny bit just to fill that gap. Now, this is when you get to decide if you're going to use the clear CA or clear filling, or if you're going to use a similar or identical color resin that is in a blank. And of course, this is all the pigments that was used to mix with the resin, and you can mix a very small portion of this, which is supplied in 14 grams, and also in what they call sample bottle there are 3 grams. This is what I suggest that people that work with my blanks to get a good selection of the base colors I use, so that they can mix a little bit, and I will show you in a minute how it's mixed. Now on this blank here we've got that filling drying, and this is where the soaking, when I refer to the soaking, is to get the super thin CA. This is the thinnest CA, 5 CPS, and you need to cover this area with a thin CA. I should have brought the 2-ounce bottle that I used to work with, because it's a lot easier, and they have a nozzle that you can cut very fine, and it's a lot easier to, and wastes a lot less. You just basically cover that area, as you can see by using the small container. You're not wasting as much. If you need to spread around, you can use your fingers if you don't mind to get a bit of a burn every so often and have sticky fingers. But the surface of the velvet is covered. I'm going to let that to settle for a minute so that it penetrates 2 millimeters. When that is cut, it's going to expose the soft velvet again, and if you want a clean cut, you have to expose, and definitely when you give this the last pass and is ready for sanding and finishing, unless you do this, cover the whole surface with the CA, and you can actually use the CA as a finish. Most of the pen blanks that I make out of this Banksia, the finish is 100% CA, is multiple coats of this thin CA, and then is rubbed with dry sandpaper 240, 300, and I go with fine wet and dry, which can go up to 1500, 2000 grit, and it makes the surface very smooth, and you still leave a fair coat of CA, which works like a thick coat of varnish that you can buff and looks like glass. So if you want to work this blank now that you allow it to dry, and you can see that the surface has soaked pretty much, it still stick if you're going to use your hands on it, but you spray it, and in seconds the surface is dry. That's how quick the accelerator works on it. So on here, because I've been moving the blank around, some of that CA that I had in here moved out, so going. Get my small container of thick CA. Like I said, it's a lot easier to apply in small quantities. You just a little drop. You fill first application you feel half, but now nothing stops you to harden this immediately. You just look at the effect of the CA. Now it's a lot thicker coat than what I had here, so would allow a few extra seconds for the CA to do its job. And there you go. Now it's basically ready to sand. When I had the other one, this is another one here, where I had a little chip. Let's say that I don't want to use a clear, I want to use a color that match as close as possible the piece that is missing, and that is a bit of the brown from the pod. So I will do, again, use a bit of tape, find a better position to tackle or to fill the bit that needs to be filled, and you're going to mix a small portion of brown. I'm going to get that brown. Okay, there we go. So this we need to use a thick CA. Any fillings, use epoxy or araldite. 5 minutes is faster. Or this thick CA, you just pour. You've got about 10 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes, depends of how hot the location where you're working is, and how many fillings you have to do, of course. Now you use a very small amount, and you stir it as you would do with any other glue that you had no color. The process is the same. Mixing process is the same regardless if you got a color or not. So you can do that with any colors. And like I said, if you have the base color that I use in most of my blanks, you're going to have enough of those little sample jars to last you a lifetime. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to take a piece and just going to drop it. Make sure that fills that little hole. Be generous, not excessively, because it means you're wasting material and you've got more sanding to do, but there's no reason for you to make that harden straight away if you require. There's 2 or 3 puffs, and you start to see the surface to shrink, and normally, like I said, in a few seconds the surface is ready to be sanded. Now, what you got to remember is when you've got a deep filling, the surface can dry. They don't mean that inside is dry, and don't make the mistake to try to put in the sander too early, because you end up having your sander all gummed up. You can also use extra accelerator to make sure that heats up, because CA sets by heating. You can also apply a hair dry or blow a heat gun to hit that area if you are in a cold environment. As we are here at the moment, we've got about 10 degrees. It's quite cold. In summertime, this will be done and over with. So you can remove the tape and go and sand that in a minute. So any other, again, every type of Banksia is cut differently, and on this one here, which is the same Banksia as this one, but just this one is slight cuts. This one is the center of the core, and all the sides trimmed to size. So basically, the main part of the Banksia part is here, and you got also the red velvet appearing in a little hole. Again, you can feel, well, looks like that did dry at the end. If it dries, you can always cut a little bit of it. And just give it a bit of a spread. Every time you see the red velvet, you don't have to do it before you start working on a material, on a blank. But after the rough cuts being done, and before you do your final cuts, the surface of this blank should be filled or soaked so that all the surface harden and the cutter cuts perfectly through it. And like I said, it doesn't take long. Any excess runs out, and you just put a little bit more. You just can spread it. No matter how rough you can look, if you let it settle by its own, you'll self-level and you'll be a lot less rough. But if you're in a hurry and you want the CA to dry fast, you have to use accelerator. So basically, this is the fundamentals of soaking, filling, soaking again, and using colors mixed with a thick CA or epoxy, or using a clear. Like I said, most of the Banksia, they are made with these semi-transparent colors. The transparent CA does most of the repairs and the fillings. I like to make sure that any exposed velvet is covered with the thin CA before I finish my blank. What I'll do now, I'm going to sand the surface. One of these surfaces where I cover with a whole CA, and I'm going to show you what sort of finish you can achieve just by covering the surface with CA and sanding it down. And it can be, basically you get two jobs in one. You are protecting, soaking the velvet, you are protecting the soft materials, protecting the whole surface, because this counts as a very hard surface coating. Okay, I'll be back in a minute.